There's a moment before the moment, that subtle pause before your eyes land, before your awareness chooses a target. Most people miss it. Most people think attention is passive, that it simply takes in, like a lens. But what if that lens is more than an observer? What if it's a sculptor, shaping clay out of probability? What if every time you look, you're not just seeing, you're summoning? Your attention isn't a camera, it's a command. The quantum field doesn't deal in certainties. It hums in waves, infinite, undetermined, waiting, a soft, trembling ocean of what could be. But the moment you look, really look, those waves collapse into particles, into pattern, into experience. You didn't just watch reality form. You authored it. You weren't a witness. You were the spark. This is why you can't afford to treat your focus casually. Where you place it, and more importantly, how, is the difference between living on autopilot and living as a conscious creator. Not in some abstract spiritual metaphor, but biologically, neurologically, energetically. Every time you observe, you activate a chain reaction. Your nervous system calibrates. Your subconscious codes it as truth. Your frequency shifts. Reality reorganizes. And if you're not choosing what you observe, then something else is. A memory, a fear, a survival script you inherited long before you were aware you were even watching. Because here's the catch. The observer isn't just you with your eyes open. It's your whole system, your beliefs, your expectations, your stored sensations. When you look at the world, you don't just see it through the present moment. You see it through everything unresolved inside you. You collapse what matches your state. Not your hopes, not your vision board, your state. So when you wake up and your chest is already tight, when your mind rushes to the problem, when your body feels braced for something to go wrong, that's not just anxiety. That's a command signal. That's a frequency scanning the field for confirmation, and it will find it. Not because it's true, but because it's coherent with you. And yet this isn't bad news. This is sacred power. Because if you can observe by default, you can also observe by design. You can choose the lens. You can train the gaze. You can feel the tension in your chest and soften it. You can feel the fear and still shift your eyes to beauty, to possibility, to what you want to believe, even before it's real. Because here's the deeper truth. Reality isn't reacting to what's real. It's reflecting what's rehearsed. And every time you choose to feel differently, even for a moment, you rehearse a new future. It's not performance. It's not pretending. It's not bypassing the truth. It's retraining the muscle of awareness, not by force, but with frequency, not with willpower, but with willingness. Willingness to feel safe in the unknown. Willingness to believe that what you see is not the end, but the edge of infinite timelines waiting for your gaze. What you look at, looks back. It matches your signal. It echoes your essence. It meets you where you are and it asks, is this the reality you choose? And if not, look again. Not harder, not faster, but softer. Look with breath. Look with presence. Look with the kind of attention that carries reverence. Because when you observe with love instead of lack, with coherence instead of chaos, you collapse a different kind of particle. You birth not just matter, but meaning. The world is waiting for your signal. And the next version of you? She's already shimmering in the field. I remember the first time I realized my gaze wasn't innocent. I was sitting in silence. Nothing dramatic, just the ordinary hum of morning light coming through the window. And yet, I felt something shift, as if the room itself responded to the way I noticed it. Not rushed, not distracted, just present. That moment. It looked back, and I knew. Attention is not observation. It's invitation. When you linger with something, a person, a thought, a feeling, it grows. Not because it demands to, but because you fertilize it with your focus. You water it with your awareness. And that's the spell we're casting all day long, whether we know it or not. Every sigh, every flinch, every glance, it's a signal. It teaches the field who you are being. It tells your reality what story to mirror. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. And what you are is not a thought, not a vision, not a mantra on your wall. What you are is the energetic signature your body keeps returning to, your baseline breath, your resting beliefs, the stories your cells still hold on to when you're not performing presence. When the mask slips and the subconscious takes the wheel, that's what collapses timelines. Not effort, essence. And essence is subtle. It's not loud like strategy. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg for approval. It just hums. It whispers. And that whisper tells the quantum field exactly how to respond. So ask yourself, what are you whispering without even knowing? When you walk into a room, do you feel seen or invisible? When money shows up, do you feel safe or skeptical? When love lingers too long, do you brace or breathe? These micro moments reveal your true broadcast. They tell you what part of you is still stuck in a past timeline, still watching the present through the eyes of your younger, unchosen self. And you can't collapse new possibilities while observing through old pain. You have to become a safer observer, one whose nervous system doesn't tremble at good things, one who doesn't flinch at stillness, one who doesn't sabotage softness because it feels unfamiliar. That safety isn't mental, it's embodied. It lives in the way your shoulders drop when you trust, the way your stomach softens when you let in joy, the way your breath slows when you realize you don't have to earn what's already yours. Because here's what the field knows, even when you forget. Alignment doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from needing less, from doing less, from forcing less. It comes from remembering that you are already tuned to something greater, that your observation, when rooted in love, is a healing force, that you don't have to push for evidence. You become the evidence. You become the proof that new realities are possible, simply because you are willing to observe life differently. You see the flower bloom, and instead of brushing past it, you pause. You feel the sun on your skin, and instead of numbing it, you receive. You speak to a stranger, and instead of closing, you open. That's the shift, from a default observer to a divine participant. And suddenly, nothing is passive. Not your gaze, not your breath, not your life. Everything is infused with the magic of your attention, and everything changes when you remember that. This is where the deeper alchemy begins. Not in the doing, but in the noticing. Not in efforting a better reality, but in relaxing into one that's already reaching for you. Most of us are trained to chase, to strategize, to control. But in the quantum field, control is noise. Coherence is clarity. And coherence begins the moment you let go of trying to make things happen and start allowing yourself to feel them happening through you. That means softening the grip, not just mentally, but energetically, somatically, in your tissue, in your tone, in your pace. Because here's the truth no one tells you. The field isn't listening to your words. It's listening to your nervous system. If you say, "I trust," but your gut is tight and your jaw is clenched, the field hears fear. If you say, "I'm ready," but your breath is shallow and your chest is armored, the field hears resistance. If you say, "I am abundant," but you flinch every time you check your bank account, the field hears scarcity. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because the body doesn't lie. And the field doesn't respond to lies, it responds to resonance. So if you want to collapse new timelines, you don't need louder affirmations. You need deeper attunement. You need to become the kind of presence that your desires feel safe landing in. That's the embodiment. Not pretending, not pushing, but becoming an energetic match for the reality you claim to believe in. Not through perfection, but through permission. Permission to rest before you've earned it. Permission to feel joy without explanation. Permission to let go before the outcome is clear. Because every time you do that, you anchor into a different vibration. You teach your system that safety isn't in the outcome, it's in your own beingness. And from that place, you observe the world differently. You no longer seek confirmation. You radiate certainty. You no longer question if you're worthy. You exhale, knowing you've always been. You no longer hustle to prove. You become the quiet power that doesn't need to be proven. And that shift, from chasing to choosing, it sends a signal, one the field can't ignore. Because when you become coherent, your observation becomes magnetic, not with force, but with frequency. It bends probabilities. It pulls the unseen into form. It calls timelines to collapse in your favor. And you don't need to micromanage the how. That's the illusion, that you're in charge of logistics. You're not. You're in charge of alignment, of holding the signal, of staying rooted in a state that reflects the future you desire, not the past you've outgrown. Because that's the catch. If you keep watching your life through the same emotional filter, you'll keep collapsing the same outcomes. Not because it's meant to be, but because it's familiar. And familiarity, to the subconscious, feels like safety. But what if safety could feel like something else? Like expansion, like play, like joy that doesn't come with a price. That's the edge we stand on every day, the moment between observation and creation, between signal and response. And the question is always this: what part of you is doing the watching? The one who fears or the one who remembers? Because the one who remembers, she doesn't collapse old timelines. She births new ones, effortlessly, elegantly, just by being. So here's the paradox. The more gently you observe, the more powerfully you create. Not by efforting the outcome into place, but by aligning your internal gaze and the one beneath the mind to the frequency of what already is just beyond the veil. Because when you observe through lack, you perpetuate delay. But when you observe through wholeness, you invite arrival. This is not about pretending everything is okay when it isn't. It's about becoming the version of you who knows that wholeness was never conditional. Think about the last time you were fully immersed in something beautiful, not distracted, not evaluating, just there, watching a candle flicker, feeling music bloom in your chest, standing in a quiet room filled with golden afternoon light. In those moments, time stretches, thought dissolves. You're not hoping for a future. You're not haunted by a past. You're simply observing from the now. And that's the portal. That's where coherence begins. In that stillness, you collapse not through desire, but through being. And in that being, reality rearranges. Because when the field feels your presence, it doesn't need a reason to respond. It only needs resonance. That's why the shift you're craving won't come from more doing. It comes from attuning, from regulating your system to a state that can hold what you've been asking for, from reminding your body, not just your mind, that it is safe to receive. Because your body remembers what your soul already knows. Manifestation isn't a reward, it's a reflection. And the reflection can only appear when the mirror is still enough to receive it. So what if your job isn't to force clarity, but to become clear? What if your practice isn't fixing the external, but fine-tuning your frequency? What if you stopped asking when it's coming, and started asking who you're being while you wait? Because it's in the being that timelines bend. It's in the breath between resistance and trust that the future softens into the now. It's in the way you return, again and again, to the quiet knowing beneath the noise. That knowing is ancient, cellular, sacred. It's the pulse of your original essence, untouched by the programs that told you to strive, to prove, to earn. And when you observe the world from that place, everything changes. People treat you differently. Opportunities flow more fluidly. Coincidences become confirmations. Not because you manipulated the field, but because you finally stopped resisting your natural frequency, and in doing so you collapsed the barrier between the version of you who waits and the one who already is. That version, the already one, doesn't chase alignment. She embodies it. She doesn't beg the field to respond. She trusts it already is. She doesn't watch life with fear. She observes with love, and that love shapes the particles themselves. Because love is the most coherent frequency of all. And when your gaze is soaked in it, the kind that doesn't need proof, the kind that comes from source, the kind that remembers, the field doesn't just notice you, it becomes you. It rearranges in your image, not with force, but with frequency, not from effort, from essence. And suddenly, what once felt far begins to form right where you are. Let's pause here, just for a moment. Feel the weight of your attention soften. Let your breath remind you that right now, in this stillness, you are collapsing the future into the present. Not with pressure, but with presence. Because here's what they don't teach us. Every time you return to yourself, to this calm, regulated, attuned state, you are resetting the signal. You're telling the quantum, this is who I am now. Not who I used to be, not who I pretended to be under pressure, but who I actually am, underneath the noise. And from that place, the field listens differently. It doesn't just echo your thoughts. It mirrors your embodiment. This is why two people can visualize the same desire but only one receives it. Because one is trying to manifest from mental pressure, while the other is observing from emotional coherence. One is leaking energy through urgency, the other is anchored in sufficiency. One is watching with fear, the other is watching with love. And love changes the pattern. Not just poetic love, but deep physiological safety. Because love and safety are inseparable in the body. When you feel safe, your system opens. When you feel loved, your signal strengthens. When you trust the moment, you collapse the timeline. Not by waiting, but by becoming. That's why you must become the safety first. Not wait for the external to validate it. You feel it in your gut unclenching, your shoulders releasing, your thoughts quieting enough for truth to whisper through. That's when you know your observation has shifted. You're no longer scanning the world for what might go wrong. You're now magnetizing what already belongs to you, because it does belong to you. The moment you attune to the version of you who's already living it, not someday but right now in the quantum, you shorten the distance between now and next. You collapse maybe into already. But here's the paradox. You can't fake that alignment. You can't say I'm ready while your body screams I'm not safe. You can't say I trust while secretly rehearsing every backup plan in your nervous system. The field doesn't respond to language. It responds to integrity, not moral integrity, energetic integrity. The alignment between your thoughts, your feelings, and your body's signal. When that alignment clicks, even for a breath, reality moves. You feel it in the way your day unfolds with synchronicity, in the way the right person calls, in the way you suddenly remember a path you'd forgotten. That's not coincidence. That's coherence. That's the quantum responding to your gaze. And so you begin to understand. Your life is not responding to what you want. It's responding to how you watch. Do you observe with hope masked as fear? Or do you observe with trust that doesn't need proof? Do you watch life with tightness in your chest? Or with a soft belly and open palms? Because when you soften, you signal readiness. When you slow down, you open the channel. When you feel now, you collapse later. And the future you thought you had to earn begins arriving through the portal of your presence. And then something unexpected happens. Without forcing, without trying, you begin to feel it. A soft undercurrent humming beneath your life. A knowing that can't be explained, only experienced. It's the shift from seeking signs to becoming one. From waiting for alignment to realizing you are alignment. This is where the observer effect becomes embodied truth. Because now, you're not watching your life from the outside, trying to piece it together. You're inside the signal, shaping it with your breath, your choices, your gaze. You no longer treat reality as fixed. You know it's fluid, moldable, a mirror that bends to the energy you carry into each moment. Not from a place of control, but from deep coherence. You start to notice how the smallest choices ripple. The way you pour your tea, the way you answer the phone, the way you respond to tension. Not with reaction, but with recognition. You notice how presence creates space, and space allows new timelines to land. No longer are you chasing possibility. You are making space for it to arrive. And here's the miracle. Possibility loves space. It's drawn to the ones who don't need to cling, who don't beg reality to be different, who know that the field is always listening, and therefore speak with reverence. That's what your attention becomes, a prayer. Every glance, every breath, every pause before reacting. It becomes a sacred message to the field. I trust. I'm ready. I remember. And reality responds, not with drama, but with elegance. Not with noise, but with clarity. Because when you become energetically quiet enough, you start to feel how loudly the universe is loving you. You feel it in the way the wind shifts at just the right moment, in the lyric that lands like an answer, in the silence that no longer feels empty, but full. That fullness is coherence. And in coherence, time bends. You stop tracking minutes and start tracking moments. You stop waiting for signs and become the living embodiment of one. You stop trying to get somewhere because you realize you are the somewhere. You are the timeline. And that timeline collapses every time you stop asking when and start embodying now. That's not a mental exercise. It's a cellular surrender. It's trusting your body to lead, your breath to guide,
your gaze to reveal what's always been here, quietly waiting for your safety to catch up with your vision. Because manifestation is not magic. It's memory, a remembering of the frequency you've always carried. And when you live from that place, the place beyond pressure, beyond striving, you collapse the illusion of separation. You become the observer and the observed, the sender and the signal, the prayer and the proof.
You are not watching life happen to you. You are happening to life. With every gaze, every soft exhale, every moment you choose presence over performance. This is how timelines bend, not with push, with presence. And so you begin to walk differently, not faster, not louder, but fuller. Each step becomes less about arrival and more about resonance. You feel how your energy precedes you into every room, how your gaze is no longer searching. It's offering coherence, offering presence, offering safety, not just for yourself, but for everyone who meets your frequency. This is what happens when you stop using attention as a tool and start living it as a temple. Everywhere you go becomes sacred, because you're not just seeing, you're collapsing form into place with the quality of your perception. No longer scanning for what's missing, you're witnessing what's already here. And in that witnessing, reality unfolds differently. Not because the external changed, but because you did. You stopped needing the field to prove something. And the moment you stopped testing it, it began trusting you. Because here's the secret. The quantum doesn't withhold. It waits for coherence. It waits for a signal it can match without distortion. And when that signal comes from an embodied state, not a performance, the field rushes in. It doesn't trickle. It floods. And what once felt impossible becomes inevitable. You look back at the life you used to live, the stress, the doubt, the endless striving, and it feels like watching someone else's story. Because in a way it was. That version of you was observing through fear, through programming, through inherited limits. But now you see with clear eyes, with a regulated nervous system, with a heart that doesn't need to close to stay safe. Now, when love enters, you let it. When opportunity arrives, you receive. When uncertainty lingers, you hold it with grace. Because you've become the version of you who doesn't collapse timelines through urgency, but through unwavering alignment. And you realize, it was never about trying harder. It was about softening deeper. So you soften, again, into the moment, into the breath, into the version of you who's not waiting to arrive. She's already here, fully, visibly, unapologetically. And that version, she watches life unfold, not with impatience, but with intimacy. She knows that what's meant for her can't miss her, not because it's destined, but because she no longer delays it with distortion. She knows that her observation is the canvas, her frequency is the brush, and her presence is the paint. And as she paints, the future forms, not far away, not someday, but here, now, in the gaze that no longer doubts its own power. So now you understand, your attention was never passive. It was never neutral. It was never just seeing. It was always sculpting, always transmitting, always collapsing light into form with every breath you didn't even realize was creating. And now that you remember, you can never unknow it. You'll feel it in the in-between moments, the space between inhale and exhale, the pause before reaction, the flicker of a thought before you choose whether to follow or release. These are not empty spaces. They are portals. Every micro-choice of awareness becomes a seed, and the field, it listens for seeds, but it only waters the ones that come from alignment. This is where your real power lives, in what you notice when no one else is watching, in how you tend to your energy when nothing visible has shifted, in whether you look at your life through the lens of lack or through the remembering that you are not here to chase creation, you are here to channel it. And creation doesn't require permission, only presence. This is the kind of power that doesn't scream, it hums, it vibrates beneath your skin as a quiet yes. It reshapes your timeline not through noise, but through nuance, through the subtle but sovereign decision to no longer abandon yourself in the waiting. Because there is no waiting in the quantum, only frequency, only now. So when you walk into your day, you carry the awareness that every choice is a collapse. Every gaze is a gravitational pull, every emotion, a vibrational filter determining which reality takes form, and you choose. Not perfectly, not always painlessly, but consistently. You come back, again and again, to coherence, to presence, to a heart that doesn't just hope, it knows. Because the version of you who lives the life you've been asking for isn't someone you become. She's someone you remember, someone already coded into your field, waiting for you to meet her in signal. And she doesn't ask if it's working. She doesn't track how long it's taking. She simply watches, with love, with reverence, with the unshakable knowing that what you look at looks back, and that what you are becoming is already looking for you.